I don't have children, and people ask me like, what happened? And I'm a heterosexual woman, right? And so it's like, well, a couple things happened. I think first and foremost, I always say I spent too much time on the wrong relationships. That is, I tell any young woman, get in and get out. It's
Get
the
in and
OG
get out.
classic.
That's
That's
an
what Jay-Z
OG
said.
classic.
That's what Jay-Z
That's an
said.
Now
OG
you speaking the
classic.
language.
Right?
Now you
And you
speaking
get
the
in, you
language.
get out. If it works, great. If it doesn't, move on as quickly as possible, right? Learn the lesson, forgive, and move on. So I didn't necessarily do that as often as perhaps I should have. But I also think, being creating a space to date and explore. Women that are driven in their careers
They don't have time.
tend to forget
Well,
about
that's
how
another,
intentional you need to be about
that's
dating.
another thing. I'm glad you said that. They don't have time.
They don't have time. They don't make time.
They don't make the time.
They don't make
It's
the
different.
time.
They have the time. They don't make the time.
They don't make it because it
They don't
gets
have it.
exhausting, right? When you're constantly coming up against the men that may not be equally yoked.
Wow. Okay. So that is a really great one. Talking about the time, she's basically focusing in on the time that a lot of busy corporate, mega successful women. I want to make sure I put that uber successful so we know who we're talking about. We're talking about the top 7%. In fact, I had somebody in the comments recently. If I can find that comment, I'll actually put a link to this video, for her, so that she can find that, because she was literally asking me. She was like, Jay, what do you do about the women who are in that top 7%? What can you tell them? And, my answer has always been Proverbs 31, and has been talking about being humble, because I believe that if people are truly humble and women don't walk with their money, believing that their money gives them extra power, that now they're higher in the whole, dating food chain, so to speak, or their dating market value. See, a lot of women think their money gives them a higher place in the dating market value, but it actually does not. And so it's really, I think, very difficult for a lot of women, especially corporate driven women, to see this. So let's rewind it back. Okay. So let's get into Jay's world and how I basically talk about it. So if you have been around on my channel for a long period of time, we would consider a lot of these super uber successful women to be, some people might call these women masculine. Now all women that are masculine are very successful. In fact, it's really kind of a certain trait that just certain women have. Now, what I would say is that more than likely the woman has at least a little bit of instinct based in her personality. We talk a lot about Helena, like I do a lot of Helena's videos. I do a lot of Riva's videos. And if you follow those two women, both of those women have instinct in them. Now, Riva seems a lot more 100% instinct based. She really does feel almost 100% instinct based, maybe with a little bit of thought. But when you start talking about Helena really feels like she's more heart based with a little bit of instinct. And you can see the difference in the way that they act. Ebony K. Williams, who comes up a lot, she is definitely instinct based. And I don't really think she's pulling from either of the other two. It's almost like she's 100%. So this particular lady seems like she could be a hybrid because she's softer. She's going through her information without so much demand. But I understand her main point is the time. See, we talk about this all the time, and I'm even telling people, because there's such a big move trying to encourage Black people, period, whether you're a man or a woman, to start your own business. And I'm always telling people, no, for most of you, that is not going to be the best career choice. Now, I just put up a video. Very few people saw it. It was my very first financial video, Money Making Mondays. And very few of you all checked it out. But I'm still going to do a few more because I think it's important. Because like I said, my goal is to try to help you, get married and be successful in your relationship. And money is a part of a relationship, right? But what happens a lot of times is that when women are going through this, right, and they're building these careers, well, it takes time. It really does. It takes time. The main reason why one person is successful in something and another person is not, is really has nothing to do with what you were born with to a degree. A lot of it is just how much time you're willing to put in it. So if you take someone like LeBron James, who right now we will consider him probably the best basketball player that is playing. Okay, if you took two men that had that same height, they had the same basic weight class, et cetera, but LeBron spends, 8 hours or 10 hours a day, practicing on the basketball court. And then the other guy basically spends 4 hours practicing, and the other, 6 to 8 hours, he's just doing whatever. Who do you think is going to, win? Who do you think is going to go to the NBA? It's going to be the one who puts in the most time. Because what's really happening is over time, you're actually adding more days. See, if the average person is willing to work 4 hours a day, but you're willing to work 8 hours a day, then you're actually learning and growing at twice the rate. All right. And so when you want to go to pro level, the pro level people are generally the people who are willing to put it in twice as much. So by the time you're dealing with a pro player, the average player might have put in 2 or 4 hours a day, but then that pro player has basically done double. So it's almost like they're twice as old in that sport. Does that make sense? Well, it works the same way in business. Unless you come from money, i.e. come from a business, like you have a family business, the first person in that business, they have to build that business. And most businesses, are going to take time. And most of you all know this because what happens, as you're working on your career, like some of the younger people might not quite know this, but as you gain experience on a job, people are willing to pay you more. Why? Because you've been through more things. You've learned how to handle certain situations. So when you're building a business, you're trying to put, in your brain, all of this information that you don't know. And so you have to learn at twice the rate. And if you want to go up the ladder, again, there's a lot you have to learn. So you have to put in extra hours so you can go up the ladder. So business-minded women are putting in 8 to 10 hours, maybe even 12 hours of time, trying to get up that ladder. So while other women, women that are just basically out here just doing basic life, working a 9 to 5, where the job doesn't matter to them, those women have plenty of time to meet men. They have plenty of time to basically grow. And then honestly, they grow in the department of relationship because they're spending more time in relationship. But corporate women that are trying to go up the ladder, women who are uber successful, they don't have the time because they're not putting time over there. So even if you have a woman, let's say she started her entrepreneurship at 23, and she's done that all the way to 35. And now she's a uber successful woman. She's making, $250,000 a year. She doesn't really have to work. She can basically spend 12 hours a week, doing her job. And now she can relax. And now she's looking for men. Well, one of the first problems is she doesn't understand men. She doesn't even understand how relationships work because she's put very little time in it. See, you can't believe just because someone is older that they just poof, this information just pops in their head. It doesn't work that way. And see, that's why I always laugh, because God is laughing at all of us because time is the great equalizer. The people who generally do the best in life are the ones that do a little bit of everything. They spend a little bit of time watching TV. They spend a little bit of time working on their career. They spend a little bit of time working on their relationship. They spend a little bit of time on, their family. So basically by the time you add it up, it's, it might not be equal in every place, but it's balanced. But those who lean one way, they tend to have a hard time because they generally are behind when it comes to the thing that they're missing. So for this particular lady, I agree with what she's saying, but this is the reason why. It's just because she spent so much time doing that. And now she's coming out and she's having to fight the same battles that she would have fought in her early 20s. But now she has to fight them in her 30s. But now she's dealing with men who are a lot more skilled, and so they're able to kind of navigate differently. And so what she would have to do is she has to put that time and energy, recognizing that she has to really rebuild that skill. Now, there are women, like I said, that depending upon how long it took for them to grow, they might have run into really great men, different things like that. So there's always these situations, so, people need to remember that, no cup is exactly the same. I'm always encouraging everyone to see the spectrum of life, not to put people or even things or ideas in buckets, But I do think it's really important if a woman wants marriage, not to think it's something you can get on the back burner, because it's not. Relationship takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy. And so you have to be willing to put in the time, just like LeBron put in the time on the court. You have to be willing to put in the time, and you can't always just put in that time with one person. You might literally need to date 50 people so that you understand where you need to put your time. Because sometimes, and I'll even admit this for myself, sometimes you get in and you're dating someone, and then, like kind of like what she was saying, she's like, well, you're not going anywhere. And so she quickly cuts it and runs to the next person. But a lot of people walk in a little bit of pain, and a little bit of pain is not really a red flag. It might just be a yellow flag. Right. And so sometimes a really great person might be the person that shows up after 2 or 3 dates. And that was one thing I had to learn, because I was very quick there. The first date didn't go great. I would just be. But then over time, I recognized that no, a lot of people need to warm up on the first date. They're really not comfortable. And so I learned that the second dates were almost always better than the first dates. And then the third time we got together was almost always much better than the second time. But then I did notice about, fourth or fifth time you get around somebody, they kind of chill out. So that's just one of the things that I've learned. But anyway, I definitely think women can find men, successful women can find men. And again, to that one lady's comment, and to any women that are watching this particular video, the key element is being humble. That's the key element. Be humble. Do not see your money as power. Now, I will say this for the ladies that are watching. It doesn't mean that you have to lower your standards. See, I think we get the standard thing all confused, right? So recently, if I could find the video, I might do a whole video on it. But recently, there was a guy on some show, and he was like slurping soup or something like that. It was crazy, but he was slurping this soup. And, all the women were kind of like looking crazy, because I think it was on Sherry's show or something like that. And, everybody was kind of looking at him crazy because he hadn't learned like the basics. So if a woman says, look, I don't want a man who slurps his soup. I want a man who actually knows how to go out to a nice restaurant. He knows how to act. He knows how to put the napkin in his lap. Guys, if you didn't know that, you're supposed to put your napkin in your lap. If he doesn't know how to cut his hair, if he doesn't know how to, groom himself, if he doesn't know how to speak without cursing, for an hour, I don't consider that to be high expectations. I'm just being real. I just don't. But if a woman is basically saying, I'm not going to date a man who makes $5,000 lower than me. He has to make $10,000 higher than me. I'm not going to date a guy who is my height. I'm not going to date a guy who is this, who is that. That's when it starts to get into those expectations. And even with the height thing, I'm not talking about for the women that are 5'2". I'm talking about for the women that are 5'9", and they start to understand that you are tall. Okay, when you're 5'9", you're tall. And so as a woman, you might not want to date a man who is 5'9" or 5'10", but I would say at that point, you're having high expectations because you're going beyond the average. The average man is 5'9". So when you start to go above the average man, that is when your expectations start to get high. And that's when a lot of men start to get frustrated. It's really the equivalent of saying if a guy has a good job, he takes care of himself and he's doing everything he wants. But then you're like, well, if he doesn't drive a luxury vehicle, I'm not talking to him. He might not even like luxury vehicles. So why would that even be a part of the equation? Or if you say something like, well, if he watches sports, I'm not going to date him. Why? Because some guy in your past watched sports and you didn't like that feeling when the guy preferred to watch, the Falcons win over spending time with you, even though it's only 3 hours a week and it's only for 19, 20 weeks out of the year. So you don't really need to have those types of expectations. But for him to treat you well, oh yeah, you can expect that. For him to, to speak well of you, to care about you, to actually listen to you, to, like I say, pay for 1 or 2 dates when you're first getting to know him, then that's not unrealistic. So I want to make sure that I kind of say that. But at the same time, if you don't have that as a woman, and then you're coming to the table with your love, okay, with your respect of him, with being nice, being kind, then I really don't see you having too much of a problem. And for women that are saying that they do have problems in this, please say something in the comments, and then let me know if you will be willing to actually do a, interview, because I would love to just, get you on. If you watch my channel, I'm not about embarrassing anybody. I'm not about talking bad about anybody, but I am stuck in my little bubble, like everybody lives in their little bubble. And the only way I can learn more and work on some of the problems that you might be having is to basically talk to you. All right. So if you're willing to do that, please, let me know. Like I said, because I am moving more and more towards a format of live and or interviews. So, more information can come out and bless people. Anyway, please like, please subscribe, and I'm going to see you all in the very next video.